At 6:30 on the morning of June 6, 1944, a 22-year-old soldier from Wisconsin waded through chest-deep water toward Omaha Beach. His landing craft had just struck a mine. Men were screaming. The water was turning red. Behind him, he saw an arm floating alone in the surf. Nothing else. Just an arm, severed from a body he would never know. His name was Francis Jack O'Donnell. He was a corporal in Company L, 18th Infantry Regiment, 1st Infantry Division, the big red one. What he did in the next 4 days would earn him the Distinguished Service Cross, the nation's second highest award for valor, but he would spend the rest of his life insisting he was no hero. He said the heroes were the ones who didn't make it back. Jack O'Donnell was born in 1922 in Whitewater, Wisconsin. He was the kind of boy who grew up fast because the times demanded it. In 1938, at the age of 15, he lied about his age to join the Wisconsin National Guard. The country wasn't at war yet, but the world was already burning. He could feel it. When the war came, his unit was activated. By 1942, he found himself assigned to Company L of the 18th Infantry Regiment, part of the legendary 1st Infantry Division. This unit had already carved its name into the history of American arms. The division shipped out to North Africa. O'Donnell landed in Oran, Algeria with the rest of the Big Red One, and for the first time, he saw what war really looked like. It was not like the training films. It was not like the stories the old veterans told. It was a ravine east of El Getter, Tunisia. German panzers were advancing. O'Donnell's squad was ordered to take Hill 407, a strategic position the Germans had fortified. As they moved up, he tripped over a wire. In an instant, flares ignited. Mines detonated. Machine gun fire tore through the darkness. O'Donnell was hit. Not once. 26 times. Bullets shredded his body. He collapsed on the hillside, bleeding into the Tunisian dirt. The German soldiers swept past him. They assumed he was dead. For hours, he lay there in the darkness, unable to move, certain that he was dying. A Catholic chaplain found him at the aid station and gave him the last rites. The wounds were so severe that no one expected him to survive. But Jack O'Donnell was not finished. He was evacuated to a field hospital in Sidi Bel Abbes, Algeria. Surgeons worked on him for days. 26 wounds, shrapnel, bullet fragments. He should have died a dozen times. He did not. Slowly, impossibly, he healed. By the time he rejoined his unit, the 1st Infantry Division was preparing for the invasion of Sicily. O'Donnell fought through the Sicilian campaign, then across the island, and then back to England for what everyone knew was coming next, the invasion of Europe. D-Day. In England, the men of the 1st Division trained relentlessly. They knew they would be in the first wave. They knew the beach was called Omaha. They knew the Germans had spent years fortifying the bluffs above it. What they did not know was how many of them would die in the first hour. O'Donnell landed on Omaha Beach with Company L at 6:30 a.m. on June 6, 1944. His landing craft struck a mine before it reached the shore. Men were thrown into the water. Some never came up. O'Donnell made it to the surf. The water was cold, far colder than anyone had warned them. His equipment weighed 60 pounds. His boots sank into the sand with every step. Behind him, he saw an arm floating in the water. Just an arm. He did not stop to think about it. He could not. The German machine guns opened up from the bluffs above. The MG-42s fired at a rate of 1,200 rounds per minute, a sound like ripping canvas that men would hear in their nightmares for the rest of their lives. O'Donnell waded ashore. He did not freeze. He did not fall. He kept moving. Later, in an oral history recorded years after the war, he would describe the feeling as something beyond fear, a kind of detachment. A sense that his body was moving on its own while his mind watched from somewhere else. He would say he felt fearless that day, But not because he was brave, because he had been concussed, because his body was running on something deeper than thought. He made it to the shingle, the line of stones and seawall at the base of the bluffs. Men were pressed against it, pinned down, unable to move. Bodies floated in the surf behind them. Blood ran in rivulets down the sand. For the next 3 days, O'Donnell fought through the hedgerows of Normandy. The 18th Infantry Regiment pushed inland, through the maze of ancient earthworks that the Germans had turned into killing fields. They reached their objective. They kept moving. On June 10, 1944, 4 days after the landing, O'Donnell's squad was advancing near a German position when machine gun fire erupted. The enemy had them pinned. Men were dropping all around him. O'Donnell made a decision that would earn him the Distinguished Service Cross. He picked up his rifle and began to move. While his squad withdrew under fire, O'Donnell engaged the enemy alone. He advanced through the hedgerows, using the terrain for cover, and methodically eliminated the German position. By the time it was over, he had killed 9 enemy soldiers with his rifle and grenades. His squad made it out. O'Donnell made it out. The citation would later describe his actions as extraordinary heroism, but Jack O'Donnell would never talk about that day. Not to his wife, not to his children, not to anyone. The war did not end for O'Donnell on June 10th. He fought through Normandy, through the liberation of Paris, where he was one of the first Americans in the city, through the hedgerows of France, through the brutal autumn battles outside Aachen, Germany. He was wounded again. Shrapnel tore into him outside Aachen. He was evacuated, but he went AWOL from the hospital to rejoin his unit. He was not done. He took 30 German soldiers prisoner outside a field hospital. He talked a pillbox full of enemy soldiers into surrendering without firing a shot. He captured a German field-grade officer. He kept moving, kept fighting, kept surviving. By the time the war ended, Jack O'Donnell had been wounded 4 times, earning a Purple Heart with 3 oak leaf clusters. He had received the Bronze Star. He had received the Distinguished Service Cross. He had been in the first wave on Omaha Beach. He had been given the last rites and survived. He had done things that most men would have spent their lives talking about. He never spoke of them at all. In 1962, after 22 years of service, Jack O'Donnell retired from the Army. He moved to Madison, Wisconsin, and took a job at the public library. He worked in the card catalog, a quiet job for a quiet man. He and his wife, Rita, raised 6 children. They were born in 6 different states, wherever the Army had sent them. When they finally settled in Madison, Jack O'Donnell settled with them. He was known around town as a gentle man. He liked baseball. He liked a good joke. He liked apple pie and ice cream. He wrote poetry, and he believed that sharing was important. If you met him on the street, you would never know that he had been one of the most decorated soldiers in the 1st Infantry Division. His son Jim would later say that his father was a soft-spoken guy, a great dad. He did not talk about the war. When anyone asked, he would say the same thing, and over. I was no hero. The heroes were the ones who didn't make it back. In 1994, the 50th anniversary of D-Day, Jack O'Donnell finally wrote down what he had seen. He wrote about the landing. He wrote about the arm floating in the water. He wrote about the men who fell beside him. He wrote about how it felt to survive when so many did not. In an essay published in the Capital Times newspaper, he reflected on what he had carried with him for 50 years. That's the way it was at Omaha. It was a rite of passage for those who survived that bloody day, and I wondered at being spared. Fathers were being taken from their wives and children. Were they not better men than I? Jack O'Donnell died on November 8, 2011. He was 89 years old. The Madison newspaper that published his obituary noted his medals: the Distinguished Service Cross, the Bronze Star, and the Purple Heart with 3 clusters. But they also noted what his family said mattered more: that he enjoyed writing poetry, that he believed in sharing, that he liked baseball, That apple pie and ice cream brought him comfort on good days and bad. In the obituary, his son Jim said something that sums up the kind of man Jack O'Donnell was. He always said he was no hero. He said the heroes were the ones who didn't make it back. I think of him as my hero. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Every like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about ordinary men who did extraordinary things. Real people. Real heroism. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure Jack O'Donnell's courage and the courage of all those who didn't make it back is never forgotten.